introduce the Executive Director of the Shepherd House of Redmond, John Lodise. I'm just going to get some water here in case throat gets dry. Is the mic working okay? Thank you very much for having me here today. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak about what we do. I especially appreciate the opportunity to talk about the people that we serve and how they need us and how they need really the rest of the Redmond and Central Oregon community to be there for them in ways that are sensible and reasonable for what we're able to do. The last time I was here, by the way, I am the director of Shepherd's House Redmond. All of Shepherd's House Ministry, which is much, much larger than it used to be, has an executive director. His name is Kurt Flosky. He was here with me way back in October, maybe even earlier than that, 2023. We hadn't even opened the facility in Redmond yet. So we were talking about what we were hoping to do and what we were hoping would happen for the folks we're serving and how we hope that will all go. So today I can talk about what's happened since then. So I really do appreciate that opportunity. I thought I would just use the basic reporter's approach and do all the W's and the how's and the why's as to what's going on at Shepherd's House Redmond Center. So I'll start with the where. Shepherd's House Redmond Center is located, the address is 1350 South Highway 97. It's really at the corner of Veteran and 97, right behind Verizon and Cindy's Chinese restaurant. We are right next to the railroad tracks, which honestly, in a way, is a blessing. We're right across the railroad tracks from St. Vincent de Paul. It is probably one of the only, if not the only place in Redmond that is correctly zoned for a shelter. So we got the right building in the right way at the right time. The building used to be the Coyote Ranch restaurant. Then it became Grace Gate Church, and we got the building because Grace Gate Church decided they couldn't stay there anymore. And they wanted to find somebody whom they thought would serve God and God's children in the same way that they were trying to do, that they wanted to do. So they thought of us, and our leadership spent a good couple of years getting the financing together, making all the arrangements, overseeing construction and remodeling of the building so that it could be what it is today. So we opened in we got the certificate of occupancy in October of 2023. We opened our doors to our guests on November 15th, 2023. At that time, we operated as an overnight shelter only. One of the deadlines we set for ourselves was to get the building open before winter so that people in Redmond would have a place to be on winter nights. We weren't fully funded and we weren't fully staffed to operate the building all the time. So we operated for approximately 75 days as an overnight shelter. Things were a little bit slow at first because we were only overnight and we had to let people go during the day. On February 5th, 2024, we became a 24/7 center. That was 590 days ago. We have not closed our doors since then. We have been open continuously since that time. So, what do we do there? We're an overnight shelter, as I just said. We have individual beds for men, and we have individual beds for women in separate dorms. We have 3 family rooms where we can house 1 family apiece. We reserve those for families with children because if we get a married couple without children, they can split up into the dorms. But one thing we experienced in other shelters is that it's extremely difficult and stressful and perhaps risky for families with children to walk into a low barrier shelter and not have a place that they know is kind of their own space where others cannot intrude. So having those family rooms set aside for families with children has been extremely important to us. We also offer showers, laundry, and clothing. I'll talk about how much of that we do in a little bit. We serve 3 meals a day. So we serve breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We serve those meals and we give those showers and we offer clothing and laundry, not just to the people who stay overnight, but to anyone who also walks in during the day or evening. So that can keep us quite busy, and I'll also talk about that in a little bit too. A very important thing for us is to maintain partnerships with other people who do similar work and other people who support that work. A lot of our funding right now comes from emergency orders issued by the governor that keeps us operating on a day-to-day basis. But we also look to churches for support. We look to private donors for support. We look to partnering agencies. Neighbor Impact is a really important partner to us. We're a partner food bank with them. And so they are an agency. I don't know if any of you have seen the new warehouse that they opened last year, but they have a very big warehouse. They distribute food to many of the shelters, to Family Kitchen, other places that serve food to the public, and we depend on them a lot for the food supply that we get. Maintaining those partnerships really does play a significant role in how we're able to help people. We have a program. Now that we're open 24/7, we have all day to do things. So we serve breakfast from 7 to 8. From 8 to 11, we run a program, and because it's our building and we're not in a service contract with anyone, Shepherd's House is free to run it as a faith-based program, and that plays a really big role in how we connect with people and how we talk to people about how they can value themselves more, how they can see themselves as valued children of God, how they can understand that they really are worth moving forward and that they really are of value to other people too. Ron?
Can we ask questions?
Sure. Yeah, you can if you want to.
What kind of services, mental health services, case management services, what kind of services do you provide?
Right, so we have 2 case managers. We try to have at least 1 case manager there every day so that we can have case management 7 days a week. We connect with Deschutes County Behavioral Health. We connect with Mosaic. We connect with Best Care. We have Shepherd's House has some private counselors who can see people through OHP, and we connect people with them as well. So when we do an intake, our intake used to be a single piece of paper where we would barely ask the people their name. Now our intake is 20 pages long. That's in part because as a shelter we have certain obligations. Some of our funding partners have certain expectations of what we find out at intake, but it also helps us because we have the opportunity to engage people from the instant they walk in the door about what is it you need, how is it we can help you. Mental health often comes up in that conversation right off the bat, and then we are just trying to figure out how do we connect this person with the right kind of counseling or the right kind of mental health treatment that they need as well.
I know we had issues with asking those kinds of questions at St. Barbara when the initially started out, because there was a feeling that folks wouldn't come out of the gym and come and look for help, but they do have any questions about drug testing and all the other stuff.
Yeah, so I can say we are a low barrier shelter. That means we cannot drug test, and we don't drug test. People cannot be expected to be clean and sober in their recovery while they're with us. We can expect that they don't bring drugs and alcohol to our property. We can expect that they not use at our property. We certainly expect that they don't try to deal while they're at our property. And those are all important guidelines that we work to enforce every day. But we cannot require that people get certain help. We cannot require that people participate in a program. We can only make it available. And then they have to choose to do it. So that's part of it. Same with all of this information. We have to ask for it. They do not have to give it to us. And if they don't give it to us, we don't change how we serve them. They can still receive those services. We can encourage them that we'll be able to help them better the more they tell us. And so they may not tell us things right away. They may be with us for a while before we find out really important things about them. But everything has to be free and on a voluntary basis. It's different, honestly, from our men's center in Bend, where that is a long-term faith-based residential program. And whoever goes into that program makes a commitment. They sign on the dotted line, I will participate in these things in order to be a resident here. So that means we don't do this centralized data collection. We don't take public funding there. It has to all be private. It's different at Shepherd's House Redmond Center. It's all voluntary. At 8 o'clock, our people who are doing our program and teaching our classes and engaging in discussion, honestly, they just stand up in the room. So it's a room of people having breakfast like this, and they just start talking. And then it's a question of who is going to want to get engaged, whose attention, whose interest are we going to capture by doing that. And it's been a process, but it's also been gratifying to see how many people do say, hey, there's something there that kind of connects with my life, and I do want to hear more about it, and I do want to be involved. That really, it's gratifying when you know somebody is doing that, not because they feel obligated to do it, but it really connects with them.
You don't trespass people though with doing drugs or taking drugs.
Yeah. So we have a process. So our first step is that we engage them. Depends on how serious it is. If it's really a serious safety issue, we'll ask them to leave. And if they leave voluntarily, then they'll just leave voluntarily. Unfortunately, some people don't leave voluntarily, and then we have to call the police. So that's just part of the work. I also want to talk a little bit about our good neighbor policy. So we have operated, and we know from operating places in other locations that how we affect neighbors is a really important issue. So from day one, we really focused a lot of that. We connected with all of our neighboring businesses. We let them know what we would be doing. We introduced ourselves so they would know who we are. We check in with them. They all know who we are. They kind of know how we operate. And the point we really try to make is we will not let our guests treat your business or your property any differently than what we expect when they come to us for services. And that is something we do work with our guests all the time. We have people who will patrol around the neighborhood, and if they see somebody loitering or doing something that's likely to be of a concern, we engage them and ask them to stop doing it. And we usually do get cooperation. Yes.
That's what I was going to ask. I know Laws of Lawns had a lot of issues over there, and so I wasn't sure how do you handle that if there. I mean, I just know because I know Laws of Lawn how many issues they had. Are they 86 if they're causing issues for the neighbors as well?
That can happen. It doesn't necessarily have to go that far. We can warn them not to go there anymore. The main issue there is people go in and they want drinks and food and then they can't pay for it. And that's a big problem for them. So we let them know that usually the police are called and the police handle that. But we let our guests know, yes, we will not tolerate that, and it will cost you our services if you don't understand that you need to stop. So, yeah. Okay. So why do we do all this, and why do we do it in this way? So I think there's a process to this. It's not random. The first thing we want to do is a low barrier shelter where people can just walk in cold and get what they need. Is we want to make sure their survival needs are met, especially in the wintertime, but in other times of year too. We want to make sure that nobody is stuck out on the street in a dangerous or unhealthy or battling the elements against their physical ability to do so. We just want to make people safe and allow them to survive. And that's really step one. Step 2 is we want them to stabilize and normalize. So for somebody who's out on the street, and maybe some of these folks are trying to work while they're out on the street, where do you get clean clothes? Where do you shower? Where do you sleep at night so that you're rested for your day at work? If they don't have to worry about any of those things and they can just come to us, that's a source of stability and normalization that now gives them a lot more freedom as to how they can pursue work, how they can pursue medical care, how they can pursue mental health appointments, how they can do all those things that will really make them healthier. And they don't have to do it battling the odds every day. The third thing we want to do is we want to connect with them and get them to trust us. These folks spend a lot of time in their lives being somewhere where no one wants them to be. Very normal experience for them just to be told to move along. You're not supposed to be here. To give them a place where they can go and they are supposed to be, and people want to connect with them and people want to show them their value to other people, can make a tremendous difference in motivation and hope. And once we get there, it is much, much easier to work with folks to figure out what is your best step forward in life. Do you need housing, and what does housing look like? Can you get an apartment on your own? Can you hold a job to pay for the apartment? If you can't do that, do you have to go to some type of transitional housing where they get more support? If you can't do that, maybe you are physically infirm and you need assisted living. We want to engage in all of those processes and help people get to all of those places. Because if you don't know those specific facts and you just try to send them anywhere, it's not going to be successful. The odds are very, very low that these folks are going to succeed. And that's why we do what we do. We're really trying to meet individuals as individuals who deserve to be cared about, not just because it's a nice way to do things. It's the sensible way that you're going to help people in a way that's going to stick and not just be a quick fix that'll eventually come apart, which can happen. Okay, so I've talked about a lot of things. Now I want to talk a little bit more about who we serve. And so there are some metrics. Generally, we serve people from the Redmond area and from people who are camping east of Redmond and from Central Oregon generally. I would say 80% or more of the folks we serve fit one of those categories. We have served, since we opened our doors, approximately 630 different individuals have come through our doors. We are providing shelter at an average of 43 people a night, which if you add up for a year comes to over 15,000 nights of shelter. We're providing 190 meals a day. And when you add that up, somebody's checking the math, thank you. You add that up, that comes to well over 50,000 meals a day. Yeah. So we're doing all of these high numbers because there is a high need out there. The Central Oregon point-in-time count is the federal survey of how many homeless folks we have in the Central Oregon region. And this past year, in January 2025, it went up from 1,800 to 2,100. So right now we are still, it's slowing. It's not going up as fast, but it's still going up. People are still struggling. The story we hear a lot is, I'm working, but the amount of money I'm able to make just can't pay for regular housing in Central Oregon. It's difficult because a lot of these folks are from Central Oregon and they consider this their home, which I think is one of the reasons why you have such an entrenched population of people camping east of town. They really consider this their home and they want to stay here. And that's a difficult issue for a lot of reasons, as we all know. So those are the numbers. The other thing is, so the showers, the laundry, the clothing, we do about 50 of those service transactions a day. So if you add up all the numbers, we're probably doing about 280 different types of service each day with a pretty small staff. I don't usually have more than 5 people on site at any one time, and we have to stretch that out over 24 hours. So, and do it all again the next day because we don't ever close. So that's a basic picture of what we're doing and why we're doing it and how we're doing it and how much of we're doing it. But I wanted to share some stories. I have a few individual stories that I really want to tell. And they're some of my favorite stories from doing the work. My first story is actually about a woman who's never stayed at the shelter, but she comes to see us a lot during the day for basic services. And this woman was there one evening and she asked for help with clothing. And one of our female staff members took her to the clothing room. And the female staff member took her purse and she set it down and she proceeded to help the woman get clothing. Next thing, the female staff person turns around and her purse isn't there anymore. And she freaks out because in her purse, she had a lot of cash that she was going to use to fix her car because she lives in another town and she's a single mother of 3 and she's driving every day back and forth to work. So she calls me and she's in tears. And I said, you need to call the police because you need to try to get your purse back. So she calls the police. And while she's talking to the policeman, the woman who is getting the clothing comes back and she has her purse. And the story is, and this is the work we do and how it's so complicated, yes, she meant to take the purse. She knew she was taking the purse. Then she looked inside and she saw the cash and she saw whose purse it was. And she said, I didn't mean to take all that money from you because I know you need it. So she brought it back. So, I mean, this, you know, and that is one of my favorite stories to tell. Just about, it shows just like the heart that's in people, but also the complexity is when you throw everyday survival into something. Another story I want to tell is about a man who was with us for quite some time, and he was a really good guy, and we all really liked him, and he had a steady job in a restaurant, and he did really, really well and worked really, really hard at the job, but he struggled with alcohol. And sometimes he would struggle with alcohol, and his behavior would get him in trouble, and we got to the point where we really had to have the conversation of, you haven't been able to stop this, and we need to separate you. And it was catastrophic for him to hear that. He needed the job, he needed the shelter, he had a car. His whole life was going to come unraveled if he didn't stay with us. So we said, how about this? What if you agree to engage in treatment and you go to outpatient treatment and you go to meetings and you check in with us every day and you stop using alcohol because it's really putting you on the verge of catastrophe. And he had to think about it because this was a major life change for him. And he finally said, okay, I'll try it. So that was 8 months ago. He is well connected with a recovery community. He goes to meetings every day. He finished all his classes. He actually moved out of our shelter. We let him stay, obviously. He moved out of our shelter and he's now living in a tiny home village and he still has the same job. And that's sometimes an example. That took a tremendous amount of courage for him to face this crisis in his life and come to the decision of, I have to do something very hard and unprecedented for me in order not to destroy my life. And he did it. And we don't often see that, but here's somebody who really, really made it work. It's usually not that easy. There's usually a lot more, but he was especially really good about doing what he needed to do. One last story I'll tell. Young man stayed with us, really, really smart. He was one of those persons, we used to have trivia contests, and we eventually had to tell him not to answer anymore because he knew all the answers and none of the other guests got to really give the answers. So he left us, he found an apartment, he had a job, and I asked him if he wanted to come work for us, and he thought about it. He wasn't sure if he could handle some of the stresses of it, and he eventually said, yes, I'll interview. So we interviewed him and we liked him, but unfortunately we had another candidate who was really, really good. So I had to tell him, yeah, we can't hire you, we have to hire this other person instead. And he could have just said, oh, this is bad. He actually said, you know, I really want to do this work. And he went to another service provider and he interviewed with them and they've hired him and he still works for them. And so it wasn't a benefit to Shepherd's House, but it showed how being involved with us can add people to this community of people who need to help the folks who are houseless and the folks who really need as many people as possible to be willing to be there for them. And so that's another one of my favorite stories. So I've talked about, one thing I haven't talked about is case management. So as I said, we've had about 640 people come through our doors. Of those 640, we have over 200 transitions. I think we're up to 202 or 203 now. And positive transitions mean they've either found housing or they're in some type of transitional housing or recovery treatment program that provides promise that they'll be able to move their lives forward. That's about a 30% rate of the people, and that's, from what I've seen in other shelters, I think that's a pretty high rate. I applaud our case managers. I applaud our service partners who are also really doing work at a high level. And I think the fact that we work with our partners really makes a difference there too. That's it. If I may, could I talk a little bit about Shepherd's House as an organization? Does that sound? Just all the other things we do. So really quickly, we have a share van, and that's a van where staff and volunteers actually go out to camps and find people on the streets and just do outreach and give them basic supplies and connect with people. And that's, again, the idea to give people hope that there are people who care about them who are willing to reach out to them. We have low barrier shelters like Shepherd's House Redmond Center. We also have our Lighthouse in Bend, which does the same basic type of 24/7 work too. We have a turnkey project, the Franklin Shelter, which specializes in housing families with children and people who are medically vulnerable. They can have their own room, their own bathroom. These things can be really important when you're not physically well. And that is low barrier, which means they don't have to make all of those commitments I spoke about earlier. But people, it used to be the Rainbow Motel, that'll give you an idea of what the facility was like. We also have long-term transitional housing for both men and women. And we're especially excited because Abby's House, which is the name of our Women and Children's Center, we're expanding a lot. And we're hoping to expand from being able to shelter 10 women and children to up to 40 women and children. And we're going to be working on that over the next couple of years. And then we have a project in Bend called Cleveland Commons, which is the first model of permanent supportive housing. And what that means is they're apartments with tenants, and it works just like an apartment building with tenants, except service providers are on site 24/7 to provide whatever services they might need or to connect with them about what they might need. So, and that's a fairly new project. It just started earlier this year.
John, can you
Yes.
hang around for a few minutes?
Yeah,
Please?
yeah, okay.
Anybody that has more questions, John will hang for a few minutes. I appreciate you coming.
Thank you. Oh, thank
There
you.
you go, Dave. Appreciate it, appreciate it. One more. That's other duties as assigned.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. Really
Okay.
appreciate you doing it.
Okay, yeah, yeah, thank you.
All right. I find the bell here, so set it out for you.